I was given to a slave as punishment by my father for being obese, but I was loved like never before. Welcome to another episode of Story Threads Podcast. My name is Emma, and today I'm here with Madison, who came from Atlanta, Georgia, to tell us today's unbelievable story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Madison, thank you for joining us.
Emma, thank you for having me here today. It all started when I heard my own father say on the phone, "She's going to work on your farm for a whole year. Consider it a lesson in humility for my spoiled daughter." I was hiding behind his office door in our $2 million mansion in Atlanta, listening to every word with a broken heart. My name is Madison, and at 24, I had just found out that my multi-millionaire father had sold me as punishment for embarrassing the family. My crime: showing up at his company's gala dinner wearing a size 18 dress instead of losing the 88 pounds he demanded after I was photographed by local paparazzi at a charity event. "Robert, you got it right," continued my father, Charles Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries. "My daughter will be working on your country estate for 12 months. No cell phone, no credit card, no luxuries. She needs to learn the value of hard work." The voice on the other end of the line was deep, with a thick Southern accent. "Mr. Hartwell, I run an organic farm, not a correctional facility. Are your corporate employees already working here?" "Madison isn't an employee, Robert. She's a lesson that needs to be taught." My mother, Diane, entered the office at that moment, her manicured nails drumming on the mahogany desk. "Charles, are you sure about this? Sending our daughter to work as a maid?" She embarrassed us publicly, Diane. Her pictures in that tight dress have been circulating on Atlanta social blogs for a week. Our investors are questioning our family image. At 24, I weighed 210 pounds and stood 5 feet 8 inches. By Atlanta elite standards, that was unacceptable. My sisters, Brittany and Ashley, were skinny models who wore size 2. I was the problem child who dared to exist in a larger body. Robert on the other end of the line sighed heavily. "Mr. Hartwell, I accept because your company has invested heavily in our region. But know that we treat everyone here with dignity, regardless of the reason they came here." "Perfect. Madison will be there Monday morning." I ran to my room, my heart pounding. My father was banishing me from home for a whole year, sending me to work on a rural farm in the Georgia countryside as punishment for existing in my own body. That night, I cried until I had no more tears left. But as I packed the few appropriate clothes my mother had set aside for me, something changed inside me. A small voice whispered, "Madison, maybe this is your chance to find out who you really are, far away from them." On Monday morning, a silent driver took me on a 3-hour drive to a rural property surrounded by endless green fields. The main house was modest but cozy, with a large porch and well-kept gardens. That's when I saw him for the first time. Robert Jenkins was a 35-year-old black man, tall and muscular from physical labor, with kind eyes that contrasted with the seriousness on his face. He wore a worn flannel shirt and work boots covered in dirt. "You must be Madison," he said, approaching the car. His voice was the same as I had heard on the phone, but in person it carried a calmness that surprised me. "Yes, sir," I replied, getting out of the car with my 2 suitcases. He studied my face for a moment, then looked at my expensive clothes and designer shoes, totally unsuitable for a farm. "Your first lesson, there is no sir here. Just Robert." The driver drove away without a word, leaving me alone with a man my father had hired to educate me. But as I looked into Robert's eyes, I saw no cruelty or contempt. I saw something I hadn't found in years in my own home: respect. "Come," he said, picking up one of my bags. "I'll show you where you'll be staying." "What about Madison?" He paused and looked me straight in the eye. "You're not here as punishment. You're a person, and people deserve dignity." In that moment, something broke and rebuilt itself inside me simultaneously. My father had sent me away to be humiliated, but he had just handed me over to the man who would teach me the true meaning of self-worth. But what none of us knew was that this punishment would become the sweetest revenge I could ever imagine against a family that never saw me as enough. Robert's house was completely different from what I had expected. Clean, organized, with simple but well-kept furniture. Family photos on the walls, books stacked on a makeshift bookshelf, and the welcoming smell of freshly brewed coffee. "Did your family build this property?" I asked, trying to break the silence as he showed me the room where I would be staying. "My grandfather bought this land in the 1960s, Robert replied, placing my suitcase on the bed. "He worked in a factory for 20 years to save up enough money. My father expanded into organic farming, and I turned it into an operation that supplies the best restaurants in Atlanta. I was impressed. My father had sent me to what I imagined would be a primitive farm, but Robert ran a sophisticated and successful business. Your father mentioned that you made some questionable choices," he said, leaning against the door. "Want to tell me your side of the story?" I took a deep breath. "Questionable choices? You mean existing in a body that doesn't meet the standards of Atlanta's elite?" Robert frowned. "Your father really said that?" "Not in those words. He prefers terms like lack of self-control, disgrace to the family, and my favorite, wasted investment in education." At that moment, I saw something change in Robert's face. A controlled anger that he tried to hide. "Madison, do you have a college degree?" "MBA in Business Administration from Harvard. Magna cum laude. But apparently that doesn't matter when you wear a size 18 to a charity ball." Robert shook his head, clearly incredulous. "Your father told me you were irresponsible and needed to learn discipline through manual labor. Manual labor that, apparently, a person my size should do until they understand that." I stopped, feeling the familiar burn of humiliation rise in my throat. "Until you understand what?" Robert's voice was deeper now. "Until I understand that I need to change who I am to be accepted by my own family." The silence that followed was tense. Robert walked to the window, staring out at the fields. "Madison, how old are you?" 24. "And your parents still think they can fix you by sending you to work on a farm?" I laughed bitterly. "Robert, you don't understand. In the society I grew up in, an obese daughter is considered a personal failure of her parents. My mother took me to 15 different nutritionists, 3 psychologists, and even a lifestyle coach who charged $500 a session." "And did it work?" he asked, turning to face me. "Obviously not, or I wouldn't be here." Robert studied my face for a long moment. "Madison, can I ask you a very direct question?" "Sure. Do you want to lose weight, or do your parents want you to lose weight?" The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that before. I honestly don't know anymore. It's been so long since everyone has told me I need to change that I've lost sight of what I really want. "Well," Robert said, heading for the door, "then while you're here, how about we find out?" That night, we ate dinner at a simple wooden table. Robert had prepared grilled chicken with fresh vegetables from his own garden. The food was delicious, guilt-free, with no comments about portions or calories. "Can I ask you something?" I said as he poured homemade iced tea. "Sure. Why did you accept this situation?" "I mean, my father basically paid you to put up with me for a year." Robert stopped stirring the sugar in his tea. "Madison, your family may think they hired me, but the truth is different. Hartwell Industries invests heavily in our region. Your father has influence over contracts that keep entire families employed. So you didn't have a choice," I murmured, feeling the familiar sensation of being a burden. "No," he said firmly. "I always have a choice. I accepted because I wanted to get to know the daughter that such a respected man in business considered such a disappointment." "And what's his conclusion?" Robert smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "That your father is a jerk." I nearly choked on my tea. "Excuse me, Madison, in 2 hours of conversation, you've shown more emotional intelligence and self-awareness than many of the successful executives I've met. If your father can't see that because of your dress size, that's his problem, not yours." That night, lying in the most comfortable bed I'd slept in months, I thought about Robert's words. For the first time in years, someone had seen me as a person before seeing me as a problem. But what I didn't know yet was that Robert had his own secrets, and that my family had made a mistake far greater than simply sending me away. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of raised voices coming from the kitchen. It was Robert on the phone. "Charles, with all due respect, your daughter is not the problem you described. In fact, I'm starting to wonder if you really know her." I stopped on the stairs, holding my breath. "No, she doesn't need correcting. She needs a family that will support her. I understand that you pay well, but that doesn't give you the right to treat a human being like a reform project. I heard my father yelling on the other end of the line, but I couldn't make out the words. "Mr. Hartwell," Robert said, his voice now cold as ice. "If your intention was to humiliate your daughter, you have failed. And if your intention was to make me treat her badly, you picked the wrong man." It was then that I understood. Robert wasn't just defending me. He was declaring war on my father. And what none of us knew was that this war would reveal secrets our family had kept for decades. After the tense phone call, Robert hung up and found me standing on the stairs. Our eyes met, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. "How long have you been listening?" he asked, not sounding angry. "Long enough to know that my father didn't like your honesty," I replied, walking down the last few steps. Robert sighed and leaned against the kitchen counter. "Madison, I need to tell you some things about your family that you may not know." "Like what?" "Sit down," he said, pointing to the table. "Your family has had investments in my region for 5 years. But what they're really financing isn't just agriculture." My stomach began to churn. "Explain." "They bought land from rural families in financial distress for ridiculously low prices. They promised the families they could continue working as employees, but then they changed the contracts. Now these people work for wages that barely cover the rent on the homes they've always lived in." I felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. "Are you saying that my family is exploiting these people?" "Madison, 200 families in the region depend on the jobs your family controls. And your father made it very clear that if I don't set you straight, those contracts could be reevaluated." The reality hit me like a punch in the stomach. My father hadn't just sent me away to be humiliated. He had used entire lies as blackmail. "That's why you agreed to take me in," I muttered. "No," Robert said firmly. "I would have taken you in any way after finding out how your family really treats you. But now I understand why your father is so sure he can control me." That afternoon, Robert took me to see the property. We walked through the organic vegetable fields, and he introduced me to some of the workers. What I saw broke me inside. Entire families working under the scorching sun, living in houses that barely kept the rain out, earning wages that my family spent on a single night out in Atlanta. "Mr. Robert," said an elderly woman named Dolores, approaching with a weary smile. "Is this the special visitor you mentioned?" "Dolores, this is Madison." "Madison, Dolores has been working here for 3 years since she lost her family farm." Dolores held out her calloused hand to me. "It's a pleasure to meet you, dear. Mr. Robert is a good man. He takes care of us as best he can." When she walked away, I asked quietly, "How did she lose the farm?" Hartwell Industries offered her a loan with low initial interest rates to improve production. When Dolores couldn't make the payments, which tripled after 6 months, they foreclosed and bought the property for a fraction of its real value. My family had destroyed this woman's life, and hundreds of others. That night, I couldn't eat. I sat on the porch, staring at the stars and trying to process everything I had discovered. Robert sat down beside me. "Are you okay?" "No," I replied honestly. "My entire life has been built on the suffering of people like Dolores, and I didn't even know it." "Madison, you're not responsible for your family's actions, but I've benefited from hers. Every expensive dress, every trip, every privilege I've ever had was paid for with the suffering of these people." Robert was silent for a moment. "And what do you intend to do with this information?" It was a question that would change everything. Because in that moment, I felt something I had never felt before. Pure, justified anger that had nothing to do with my weight or appearance. "Robert, can I ask you a strange question?" "Sure. If I wanted to cause serious trouble for my family, would you help me?" He looked at me curiously. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that puts megalomaniacs in their place." Robert smiled for the first time since the call with my father. "Madison, I work in organic farming, but I've been other things in my life. And I can assure you that if you really want to take on your family, you're going to need a lot more than good intentions." "I have a lot more than good intentions, Robert. I have 3 things my family never imagined I had." "What are they?" "First, an MBA from Harvard and a thorough understanding of how business works. Second, access to all the company's passwords and confidential information since I turned 18 and became a minority shareholder. And third," I paused dramatically, "third, 24 years of pent-up anger that has finally found the right target. Robert studied me silently for a long moment. Madison, are you sure about this? Because what you're suggesting, there's no turning back. Robert, my father sent me here thinking I would return humiliated and obedient. He has no idea that he gave me exactly what I needed. Enough distance to see who he really is, and the perfect motivation to destroy everything he built on other people's suffering. That night, for the first time in years, I looked at myself in Robert's rustic bathroom mirror and didn't see a fat, ashamed daughter. I saw a woman with a purpose. The next day, I woke up before sunrise and found Robert in the kitchen making coffee. "Changed your mind?" he asked. "No. In fact, I spent the whole night planning." "And Robert?" "Yes. When I'm done with my family, people like Dolores won't have to worry about losing their homes to greedy businessmen anymore." "What about your father?" I smiled, and for the first time in my life, it wasn't a sad or embarrassed smile. It was the smile of someone who had just discovered exactly what she was capable of. My father is going to learn that sending his daughter away was the biggest mistake he ever made. Because now I know who he really is, and he has no idea who I really am. But what none of us knew was that my family was already moving their own pieces on the board. And when my cell phone rang that morning with a call from my sister Brittany, I discovered that the war I was planning had already begun. Brittany's call came at 6 a.m. My younger sister, always the favorite, never called that early unless something was seriously wrong. "Madison, thank God you got that," she said, her voice heavy with urgency. "I need to tell you something." "Good morning to you too, Brittany. What's going on?" "Dad's furious. Yesterday, he got a call from the law firm Morrison and Associates asking about land contracts in rural Georgia." My blood ran cold. Morrison and Associates was the firm representing several of the families Robert had mentioned. "And why does that concern you?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Madison, he thinks you're involved in this. He said that since you got to that farm, you must have filled your head with stories and now you're causing trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "Investigations into the company's business practices." "Madison, Dad is considering getting you out of there immediately and putting you in a rehab clinic." "Rehab? The family's last resort for troubled children, basically a prison disguised as treatment." "Brittany, can I ask you something honest?" "Sure. Have you ever wondered where our money comes from?" "Really?" There was a long pause. "Madison, don't start with conspiracy theories. They're not theories, Britt. They're facts. And when you find out the truth about our family, you'll understand why I'm doing what I'm doing." I hung up before she could respond. Robert was in the kitchen making scrambled eggs when I came downstairs. "Problems?" he asked, noticing my expression. "My family found out that someone's been looking into their contracts. They think it was me." "Did you?" "Not yet, but I will." I sat down at the table, my mind already working. "Robert, I need your help with something." "What do you have in mind?" "Access to the computers at the ranch office. I need to document everything: contracts, emails, financial records. My family gave me legal access to the company when I turned 18, but I've never used it. Now is the time." Robert studied me for a moment. "Madison, are you sure about this? Because once we start, there's no turning back." "Robert, my family has destroyed hundreds of lives out of greed. They're using my supposed correction as an excuse to continue exploiting people. It's time to stop this." That afternoon, Robert took me to the small office at the back of the property. It was a simple space with 2 computers, a printer, and stacks of organized documents. "All the contracts from the last 5 years are filed here," he said. "Your family requires detailed monthly reports." I began examining the documents. What I found was worse than I had imagined. Loan agreements with interest rates that doubled after 6 months. Clauses that allowed Hartwell Industries to seize entire properties for payments that were just 30 days late. Families being forced to pay rent on homes they had built decades earlier. "Robert, this is illegal in at least a dozen different ways," I muttered, photographing each page with my cell phone. "I know, but who's going to sue a multi-million-dollar company? These families can barely afford lawyers." I kept digging until I found something that made my stomach turn, a folder labeled Future Projects. Inside were detailed plans to expand operations into 3 neighboring counties using the same predatory tactics. But what really shocked me was the last document, a psychological evaluation commissioned by the company about my mental instability and self-destructive tendencies, with recommendations for forced hospitalization if I interfered with the family business. They were planning to lock me up in a mental institution. "Madison!" Robert approached, seeing my expression. "What's wrong?" I showed him the document. His expression darkened progressively as he read. "Son of a bitch," he muttered. "They were planning this even before they sent you here. Robert, my father didn't send me here to correct me. He sent me here to isolate me while he prepared my forced hospitalization. That night, I worked until 3 a.m. organizing all the evidence. Illegal contracts, incriminating emails, financial records showing money laundering through offshore accounts. But I needed more. I needed something that would completely destroy the family's reputation, not just his business. That's when I remembered the safe in my father's home office. I always knew the combination. He used my mother's birth date. But I never had the courage to open it. Now I did. "Robert," I said the next morning, "I need to go back to Atlanta for a day." "Madison, that's dangerous. If your family suspects, that's why. They think I'm here being fixed, vulnerable and isolated. They won't expect me to show up at their house. What if it's a trap?" I smiled, feeling a confidence I had never experienced before. "Robert, they've underestimated me my whole life. They think I'm just the fat, useless daughter. They never imagined I could be dangerous. And you can be. I'm about to find out." That afternoon, Robert lent me his car, an old Honda Civic that wouldn't attract attention in Atlanta. It was a 3-hour drive to the town where I grew up, but now it felt like enemy territory. The family mansion was empty. My parents were away at the country club, as they were every weekend. The maids had the day off until Monday. I slipped in through the back door using my old key. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Cold, elegant, and soulless. My father's office was on the second floor. The safe was behind a family portrait, ironic considering that he kept the secrets that would destroy that very family there. I typed in the combination with trembling hands. August 15th, 1962, my mother's birthday. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside was more than I had imagined. Not just documents, but also flash drives, memory cards, and even photographs. And then I found what would change everything forever: a signed agreement with a Mexican cartel to launder money through rural contracts. My family wasn't just exploiting poor farmers. They were using these properties to launder money from drug trafficking. I photographed everything, copied all the digital files, and closed the safe as if it had never been opened. On the way back to the farm, my mind was processing the enormity of what I had discovered. This was no longer about personal revenge. It was about exposing a criminal operation that affected thousands of lives. When I arrived at Robert's house at 11 p.m., he was waiting for me on the porch. "Did you get what you needed?" he asked. "Robert," I said, holding the flash drive with the evidence, "I got something much bigger than revenge." "What do you mean?" "I mean that my family isn't just going to lose money or their reputation. They're going to prison." But what neither of us knew was that my father had installed new security cameras in the safe the week before. And at that very moment, he was watching the recordings of my visit, realizing exactly what I had discovered. The real war was about to begin. The next morning, I woke up to Robert calling me urgently. "Madison, your father is here." And he didn't come alone. I looked out the window and my blood ran cold. 3 black cars were parked in the driveway. My father, 2 private security guards, and a man in a suit I didn't recognize. "Robert, the evidence," I began. "It's already secure," he said calmly. I sent copies to 3 different locations in the early hours of the morning. I ran down the stairs, my heart racing. My father was in the living room, his face a mask of controlled rage that I knew well. "Madison, we need to talk." "Now?" "Dad, what a surprise. I didn't know you liked morning visitors." "Cut the sarcasm. I know you've been in the house. I know you broke into my safe." The man in the suit stepped forward. "Miss Hartwell, I'm Dr. Peterson. Your family has hired me to evaluate your mental health." Robert stepped forward, positioning himself between us. "No one is evaluating anything without legal authorization." My father laughed coldly. "Robert, you're interfering in a family matter. I suggest you step aside." "Actually, Dad," I said, feeling a strange calm wash over me, I think Robert should stay. After all, the evidence I found directly involves his property. What evidence? My father asked, but I saw the nervousness in his eyes. I took out my cell phone and showed him the first photo, the contract with the Mexican cartel. This evidence. The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Peterson frowned, clearly not expecting to see legal documents. Madison, where did you get this? My father's voice was tense. From your safe, Dad, along with 47 other pages of incriminating documents. That's when I made my first mistake. I thought I had the situation under control. My father signaled to the security guards. Restrain her. She's clearly having a psychotic episode. Robert moved quickly, but it was 2 against 1. Within seconds, I was being held by the arms. Dad, you can't do this. I can and I will. Dr. Peterson, she's delusional, making up conspiracies. She needs to be committed immediately. Dr. Peterson looked uncomfortable. Mr. Hartwell, she seems perfectly lucid. And these documents, they're forgeries. My daughter has a history of self-destructive behavior. That's when I realized my father had underestimated me so much that he didn't even consider that I might have a plan B. Dad, I said calmly, are you sure you want to go through with this? Yes. You're going to a clinic. Robert is going to lose all his contracts in the area, and those documents are going to disappear forever. I smiled. Interesting. Robert, can you call Dr. Sarah Mitchell? Robert understood immediately. Of course. He picked up the phone. Who is Sarah Mitchell? My father asked. But I saw the first crack in his confidence. My best friend from Harvard. She now works as a federal prosecutor in Atlanta. My father's face paled slightly. And Dad? She received a package last night containing copies of all the documents I found, along with a letter explaining that if anything happened to me, she should open a full investigation. Dr. Peterson discreetly stepped aside. The security guards looked at my father, waiting for orders. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice didn't sound so sure anymore. Am I? Dr. Mitchell, how are you? Robert had gotten through. Yes, she's fine. In fact, she's here with me right now. Do you want to talk to her? He handed me the phone. Sarah? Yes, I'm fine. No, you don't need to come yet. But thank you for opening the package. I hung up and looked at my father. Sarah confirmed that the federal investigation officially began this morning. The FBI, IRS, and DEA are involved. My father staggered as if he had been punched. Madison, you have no idea what you've just done. I did exactly what a responsible citizen should do when she discovers money laundering operations related to drug trafficking. You've destroyed our family. No, Dad. You destroyed our family years ago. I just documented it. Dr. Peterson cleared his throat. Mr. Hartwell, I think I'd better leave. This isn't a medical matter. The security guards looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Let her go, my father said in a defeated voice. When they released me, I rubbed my wrists and looked into the eyes of the man who raised me. Dad, you were right about one thing. You sent me here to fix me. And it worked. I finally understand what kind of person I want to be. And what kind is that? The kind that doesn't stay silent when she finds out the truth. The kind that doesn't sacrifice innocent people to protect criminals. The kind you never were. My father aged 10 years in that moment. Madison, if you drop these charges, we can work this out as a family. There is no family anymore, Dad. There is a drug cartel disguised as a family business. Then came the final twist. My cell phone rang. Madison! It was my sister Brittany. I need to tell you something urgent. What is it, Britt? The police are at our house. They're searching everything. Mom is panicking. I looked at my father. It looks like the investigation has moved faster than we expected. At that moment, 3 official cars drove up the farm road. FBI. My father looked at me with a mixture of anger and something I had never seen before, respect. You planned all this. No, Dad. You planned it. I just documented and reported it. The difference is that you planned to hurt people. I planned to protect them. The federal agents got out of the cars. The man in front showed his badge. Charles Hartwell, you're under arrest for money laundering, extortion, and racketeering. As they handcuffed him, my father looked at me one last time. Madison, you don't know who you're messing with. I know exactly who I'm messing with, Dad. a criminal who hid behind a respectable facade for too many years. And when the police car drove away with my father, Robert put his hand on my shoulder. "How do you feel?" For the first time in 24 years, I looked around and saw complete clarity. Free. But what none of us expected was that my father's arrest would be just the first domino to fall in a chain of events that would transform not only my life, but the entire rural Georgia region. 6 months after my father's arrest, I was sitting on the porch of Robert's house, our house, watching the movement on the property that had now become so much more than a farm. The FBI had frozen all of Hartwell Industries' assets during the investigation. But because I was a minority shareholder and had been the whistleblower, I was able to keep my legal stake. The first thing I did was transfer ownership of all the rural land back to the original families. Dolores came to visit me last week, carrying a homemade apple pie and tears in her eyes. Madison, my granddaughter, will be able to grow up in the same house where I was born. How can I ever thank you? You don't owe me anything, Dolores. This was always rightfully yours. The federal investigation uncovered a web of corruption that extended far beyond our family. My father took 15 years in prison for money laundering and extortion. My mother got 5 years for aiding and abetting. Brittany and Ashley? Well, they lost all their privileges, but at least they learned to work honestly for the first time in their lives. What surprised me most was discovering that Dr. Peterson, the psychiatrist my father had brought in to have me committed, had documented everything and turned it over to the FBI as additional evidence. Your lucidity and determination convinced me that your father was lying about your supposed mental instability, he told me later. Robert approached, carrying 2 cups of morning coffee. Over the past few months, our relationship had blossomed naturally. It wasn't born out of trauma or necessity, but out of the genuine discovery of 2 people who complemented each other. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, sitting down next to me. "Free," I replied, taking a sip of my perfectly sweetened coffee. For the first time in my life, completely free. My cell phone rang. It was Brittany. "Madison, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but..." Her voice was broken. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. For never standing up for you. For being a silent accomplice. Britt, you were as much a victim as I was. You just reacted differently. No, Madison. You had the courage to do what was right, even knowing the consequences. I always knew something was wrong, but I chose to ignore it because it was easier. It was true, but holding a grudge against her wasn't going to help anyone. Brittany, how about coming over? We have a lot to talk about, and I'd like you to meet Robert." 2 weeks later, I got a call that changed everything again. It was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, my friend the prosecutor. "Madison, you need to see this. The investigation into your family has led to the discovery of a nationwide rural exploitation ring. Your testimony will be crucial in prosecuting at least 50 similar companies across the country." "Sarah, does that mean I can help other families like Dolores's?" "It means you can help thousands of families, Madison. You've become the key witness in one of the largest rural financial crime operations in history." That night, I looked at Robert. "Would you mind if our quiet life here became the center of a national legal battle?" He smiled. "Madison, I fell in love with a woman who had the courage to stand up to powerful criminals to protect innocent people. Why would that change now?" 6 months later, CNN's The Story did a special report on the case. The anchor closed by saying, "Madison Hartwell, from victim of a toxic family to national hero in the fight against rural exploitation. A true transformation through courage." But you know what makes me most proud? It's not the articles or the recognition. It's that I lost 30 kilos not because of family pressure, but because I finally found peace with myself. It's that Robert sees me as the most beautiful woman in the world, regardless of my size. It's that we built a home where people find dignity. My father sent me a letter from prison last week. It said, "Madison, you destroyed our family." My response was simple. "Dad, I saved our family from you." In the end, I discovered that the best revenge is not to destroy those who hurt you. It's becoming so strong, so honest, and so happy that they realize what they lost when they chose to belittle you. Today, I wake up every morning knowing that I'm not just the daughter who was given away as punishment. I'm the woman who turned that punishment into the greatest blessing of her life. And when I look in the mirror, I no longer see the fat girl rejected by her family. I see a woman who discovered that her value never depended on the approval of those who couldn't see her light. Robert always says, "Madison, your father thought he was punishing you, but he ended up setting you free to become who you really are." And you know what? He's right.
Wow, Madison, what an incredible transformation. It's amazing how you managed to turn the biggest humiliation of your life into your greatest victory. Thank you for sharing this inspiring story with us. And you, listener, did you like Madison's story? Leave a like, subscribe to the Story Threads podcast channel for more stories of overcoming adversity and revenge that will leave you speechless. See you in the next episode. Until next time.